And don't forget, we in Chicago and Cook County, we're always special because we've got the RTLO and the RTLO that place additional requirements on us. And I had alluded to this earlier here in Cook County, Chicago, our hands are tied because we can't ask for more. Oh, probably should have put security deposit. The security deposit amount, we are capped at 1.5 months rent. So this poses a challenge for us because sometimes the tenants, excuse me, the applicants, we can tell they would be really good tenants, but for whatever reason, they might have a couple of conditions which make them a little bit more high risk. Well, in the past, we could ask for a little bit more security deposit, but in Cook County, Chicago, we can't. It's capped at 1.5 months rent. So what has happened, I think, these past couple of years is because we can't ask for higher security deposits, we are rejecting these tenants who otherwise would be good, but we just can't afford to, take the risk anymore. Don't forget, in the Chicago and Cook County ones, there's also a risky part about security deposits because the RTLOs, RTLO tell us that we can only demand 1 month of security deposit up front when they move in. And then let's say we ask for, that 1.5 months, that other half month, we have to allow the tenant to pay that over the next 6 months. It can be risky because what happens if the tenants stop paying? Too late, they've already moved in. Now you've got to file for an eviction. It is a risky point for the landlords in terms of the security deposits, making sure we're able to collect the entire amount. And then for Cook County, at least, really limits us as to what we can deduct from the security deposits. According to the Cook County ordinance, we can only deduct past due rent and damages. So we can't collect utilities, legal fees, fines, all that other stuff that outside of Illinois and most of the rest of the country can ask for. So these are problematic for us in Cook County and Chicago in terms of the security deposits. And this is why we as landlords should think about using some of these other companies because they don't have any of these limitations. Okay, so again, just sort of reminding everybody, okay, this is what the security deposits are, this is how they work, and these are the problems with them. So now let's take a look at some of the rent insurance companies and the security deposit insurance companies. What do they actually do? What these companies actually do is they will pay us, they will reimburse the landlord for any unpaid rent and for any of the deductions that we normally are able to deduct from the security deposit, such as unpaid rent, damages, and all that other stuff. And I just went over some of the stuff that the Chicago and Cook County ordinances don't let us deduct, like the legal fees, the utilities. That is not a barrier for these security deposit insurance companies. We can deduct anything. There are a bunch of companies that provide the rent coverage, and there are a bunch of companies that provide alternatives to the tenants paying you security deposits. So I did a big research for them, and this is not even all of them. I think this is probably most of them, a big chunk of them, but there are a ton of companies out there actually that either provide rent coverage. In other words, the tenant doesn't pay me, they will reimburse me for the unpaid rent. There are other companies that provide security deposit insurance. So, and by this, remember, I mean that the tenants don't have to pay you a big chunk of cash. Instead, they pay the company and you get the insurance. So look at all of these. I contacted almost all of these. A lot of these companies didn't contact me back, or I was able to find the information online, but I did try my best to get the information from all of these companies. The problem with most of these companies, almost all of them, I should say, is that we don't qualify for most of those. And by we, I mean small landlords. So for most of these companies, they are really geared towards multifamily. So if you own single family homes, like I don't own any apartments, that automatically cuts me out. I don't qualify for any of these companies. But the biggest barrier is that most of these companies require us to have a big number of units. We got to own a lot of properties. Some of them require us to own at least 500, but actually the majority of them start at 1,000. So for most of these companies, you have to own at least 1,000 units before they will even start to cover you. I don't know about you guys. I don't know if I would love to own 1,000 because it's more headaches, but I imagine that probably cuts out most people here on today's call. And don't forget that most of the country actually is run by small landlords. We're the ones that own most of these properties. So unfortunately, we don't qualify for all of those. I've been able to find 3 so far that we small landlords do qualify for. So Hello Rented is one that we small landlords do qualify for. I've tried to get coverage a couple of times, but every single time I've tried, my applicants have been declined. It only seems to cover tenants with really high credit scores. Well, I think for a lot of us, that's not going to solve our problem. We're trying to, make it a little more affordable for tenants to be able to move into our properties, or maybe some of our applicants have low credit scores or some challenges. So if they're only going to accept people who have high credit scores, that's not going to help us. Rhino is another one. I actually still have some people. Anyway, I've tried 3 times. I've gotten coverage 3 times with Rhino. I actually still have 2 tenants who have Rhino. However, they have seemed to really change over time. So Rhino was the company I used to use, and I did a presentation about it a couple of years ago. I used to recommend it. I don't know what happened to them, but they have just really declined over time. They just don't seem to cover very many tenants anymore. I've tried a couple of times, and the tenants applicants get denied. I'll show you one here in a second. And they, after the coverage was up, you get coverage for a year. My tenants were automatically dropped because this one reason they told us. So they just don't seem to be really great anymore. So because of this, this is what prompted me to look around for another company, and I found one called the Guarantors. I have 2 people on it, and again, the information I'm going to give you is based on my personal experience with them, and this is the company that I'm going to talk about here today. So let's go into the nitty gritty, the nuts and bolts. What is this company all about? How does the process work? What do I get? What do my tenants get from using this company? Okay. So like I said, the company that I've found that I have been using and like is called the Guarantors. Kind of a strange name, but hey, it is what it is. Let me make this a little bit smaller. Okay, so here's their web address. And like I said, one of the reasons we can use it is there's no minimum number of properties required. If you have 1 property, they'll cover you. You got 10,000 properties, they will cover you. So that's really great. They don't approve every single person, but they approve most tenants, unless your credit score is 200 and you just got a lot of debt. They said that they will approve most people, and we'll get into how much it costs here later on. They've been in business for a while, 9 years, and they're not a small company. It's not like somebody just on the corner with a little sign. They're just doing things themselves. They actually cover 2.3 million units in the United States. Units are the rental properties or the apartments, and they are actually covering 2 billion, providing $2 billion worth of rental and security deposit coverage across the U.S. So it is not a small company. They're a very legitimate, large company. They do provide this coverage in all 50 states, except Alaska. And like I said, they're a legit company. They've got 200 employees across 8 countries. So that's one reason why I do like them. Okay, so that's the company that we're going to talk about. And I don't know if you guys care as to like how it operates, but it's basically I shouldn't say basically, it's a surety bond company. So what happens is I'll show you here the application process, but once the tenant gets approved, the tenant pays, and then the company issues a bond on behalf of the tenant, and it guarantees their rent, and it guarantees the security deposit to their landlord. I think all of us have heard about bonds. There's companies that we have to provide business bonds or the bail bonds. That's the exact same way that it works. They're just like a guarantee. Darn it, the typo here is supposed to be backed. No, that is right. I'm sorry. They're backed by insurance companies. So how are they able to provide all these guarantees? The insurance companies back them up. And these bonds, or these insurance companies work the same way as the car or your home insurance does. So the rent insurance and the security deposit works the same way as your car, home, renters, any type of insurance that you have. The tenant pays a non-refundable premium, and then it's a use it or lose it. So think about it like your homeowner's insurance. Or your car insurance, you get in an accident. Your homeowner's insurance, there's a fire, you file the claim, you get paid by the insurance company. That's great because you've got the coverage, everything is covered, and you're made financially whole. But if you don't suffer any loss, you don't get in a car accident, you don't have a fire, that's it. You don't get any benefit from it. You've just sort of paid the premium and that's it. I mean, I think all of us would agree that's a good trade-off. We don't want to get in car accidents. We don't want fires to happen. So we pay that premium in return for service. That's exactly how the guarantors and the surety bonds work, is they pay a premium. If you need it, they pay out. If they don't need it, if the landlord doesn't need it, then the tenant sort of loses their money. They're just paying the premium. Next, I want to show you how quick and easy it is to get coverage with this company. There's just 6 steps. They sign up. Excuse me, you sign up with the guarantors, you enroll their properties, you invite the tenant, you get a decision, the tenant pays, and the coverage was issued. The entire process from beginning to end took less than an hour. And that was with having, the tenant involved. The landlord process, part of it, I think it took me about 10, 15 minutes. It is super, super quick and easy. And I'm sure everybody's interested in that because we don't want to spend hours and hours, figuring this out and hours setting everything up. So let me go through these 6 steps and show you how quick and easy it is. And I took some screenshots. Okay, so the first step is just like any website, you got to create an account. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I think a lot of us are super familiar with how we create accounts on any website. Just go to this website, click on Get Started, and then there's 3 sections. One they call it owner operator, but of course that's a landlord. Renters can go in there and sign up. And I guess this product is sold by agents or by brokers, which one? So of course we want to just click on owner operator. And then we fill out the basic information. So there's a drop-down menu, how many properties do you own? What state do you primarily work in? Of course, Illinois, we entered there. First name, last name, and your email address. So that's it. Now you've created your account and you're ready to go. Jeffrey is asking, is there a cost to the landlord to open the account, one time or annual? None, Jeffrey. I probably should have put that in my presentation. Let me make myself a note to add that. It is free, 100% free to landlords. We don't pay to set up an account. We don't pay to maintain the account, and we don't pay one single penny for any of these policies. So it is absolutely no risk or no cost to us. Paul is asking, can the tenant cancel the insurance? Short answer, Paul, and you guys who, asked it as well, Kimberly and Paul, no. Tenants can absolutely not cancel the insurance once they set it up. We'll return to that because I do have a slide, I think, way at the end about that, but that also is awesome. And that is a difference between like the car insurance, the home insurance, the renter's insurance. They can cancel it, and then, we're sort of screwed, especially with the rental insurance, but they cannot cancel the rent or the security deposit insurance. And then Body is saying, is there a minimum of units a company manages to be able to enroll? Body, the answer is no. If you have one property, you can use it. And that's why I love it. I think most of us, I mentioned, have just a small number of properties. They will cover this. Paul, can you make this a requirement to rent your unit, or is it illegal in Cook County, Illinois? I'm glad you asked that because I asked that to the guarantor's agent that I talked to. And then we also asked this question from Rhino, which is the company that we used earlier. And they said, it's not illegal as long as you put it in your rental criteria. So remember, we're supposed to treat all of the applicants the exact same way. So if we make it a requirement for, one applicant, we have to make it a requirement for all of the applicants. And as long as we make it a requirement for all of our applicants, it is legal and we can make that a requirement. Great question. I think I have a slide about that later on, but that's a really, really good question. Okay, so let's continue there. So we created an account. You can see here, just like creating any other account. Once we create an account, we have this website is not super sophisticated. This is like their little dashboard where you run, manage everything from. The next thing we have to do is click on this little icon called Click on Enroll Properties. And then again, just very basic information for what our rental properties are all about. Is it a single family home, an apartment building, townhouse? I can't remember the other ones, but just basic stuff. Address, if you have a little nickname for your property. If it's an LLC or your personal name, what is your average rent and the year built? I think that's it. Yes, and that's it. So all you got to do is spend, a minute or two for each one of your properties to enter all this information. That's done with step 2. This is all we landlords have to do. we need to spend just a minute creating, setting up our account, and then we have to spend a couple of minutes entering our properties. I didn't enter all my properties at once. I just put the two in there that I knew I was going to use here shortly. And what does this take you? A minute, each property. That's it. That's all the amount of work that's required from us to set it up. The next step then is we go back to our dashboard and we click on this little arrow called Invite the Renter. Now, which tenants qualify for this? Of course, we want to invite any new tenants and your new applicants, but you can also use it for your existing tenants. So like Paul, you sound sort of interested in this. If you want to make all of your tenants use it, absolutely you can. You can switch over your existing tenants. The only caveat is you have to do it only at the lease renewal. You can't all of a sudden tomorrow, send out an email to your existing tenants and say, okay, everybody's got to switch over. You just got to wait for the lease renewal to come up. It's not just limited to US citizens. Migrants can use it as long as they have an ID, and I'll go over that. And even international tenants can use this. There are a lot of landlords who specialize in international tenants. So it makes it really, really good because again, we landlords, we don't want to exclude anybody. As long as we think they're going to be a good applicant or a good tenant, as long as we think they're going to be able to pay their rent, why not include these individuals? But yet sometimes it's really challenging for us to cover them. This is a good way for you to cover them. So let's get back to inviting the renters. All you do is click on the little, arrow here to invite the renter. And then this part I thought was a tiny bit confusing, but hopefully it's not. The company, the guarantors, is not involved in any decision on whether you are going to accept the applicant or decline them. This section here is basically just trying to get a handle on how much risk this applicant is going to be. So for example, if you approved the applicant, hey, they completely meet my criteria, I don't have any questions about whether they're going to be a risk or not, I'm just going to approve them. So right here, renters who qualify for a lease and would like to replace their security deposit. So this is what I did for that one tenant just last week, where she makes a whole lot of money, score. She just didn't want to pay me the cash security deposit because she wanted to use it for something else. This other one here is approved with conditions. So maybe this is for those tenants or applicants where you're like, I think they might be good, but there's a couple little issues with them. Maybe their score is a little bit low, or maybe they had one collection item in the past. You're just couple little red flags where you're not automatically denying them, but you're a little bit nervous. And then there's another category there where you outright just denied the applicant, but maybe you still, would like them to be your tenant. And you can just choose a higher coverage level here. So it's up to you which one you want to select. You just click on one of these. Okay, so we're still on step 3. So now you selected either approved with conditions, or denied. The next step here is you enter their lease information. So you just remember in the previous step, we set up our rental properties here, and you just on the drop-down menu, all your properties appear. You select that. If you've got an apartment, you enter the unit number, the lease start date, and the lease end date. So Sandy, this is where your question comes in. They are allowing us to enter, the start and the end date. So if it's less than a year, I don't see why you couldn't, enter 6 months, 7 months, whatever it is that you're looking for here. So again, I'm not 100% sure, but just based on the menus here, the form, I'm pretty sure you can. Enter the rent information. A lot of landlords do require, I shouldn't say a lot, some landlords do require, like let's say the first month's rent, you can enter it here. Maybe some landlords give you like a bonus. Hey, if you sign the lease by the next 3 days, I'll give you $100 off, whatever the case may be. Just enter the basic information here about the lease. And then the last step here is just to send the invitation out to the tenant. So just enter their email address. If you've got multiple applicants, you just enter their email address right here, click on send, and then the tenants receive an invitation email. Oh, wait, I forgot. Let me think. No, I forgot. There is another step here. You enter the email information, and then the last step here is, and I forgot who asked this question, this is where you can select how much coverage you want. Somebody asked about the rent number. Body said, how many months do they guarantee the rent? And then I think other people were asking about the coverage. This is exactly where you can specify it. You click on customize rent coverage, and then you enter the number of months. I just put 12 here just as an example. If you want 2 months of, rent coverage, you can put that, whatever it is that you want on here. And then this is where you select how much security deposit coverage you want. Customize it. I, for example, put in, this is the security deposit for one of my properties, 1.5 months rent, whatever it is. If you want to put $10,000 in there, you can. And then somebody asked this question, there is no limit. But just keep in mind, the more money you're asking, the higher the limit, the more it's going to cost the tenant, and it's just going to get too expensive for them. So just kind of be careful, don't ask too much. The good part here, though, is that you can go above the limit of that 1.5 months, where the Cook County and the Chicago, RTLO, they limit us to that 1.5 months rent. We're not limited to it here on the guarantors. You can go above that here. But again, just keep in mind the balancing point. Don't go too high, because then it's just going to be way too expensive, the applicant there. All right, I think that was the last step. Yep, so that's it. All you got to do is enter some information about, your lease, how much cover you want, and then the tenant receives this invitation email. All I got to do is click on the link here to get started. And look at how easy and quick it is for the tenant as well. So before I do that, let me just backtrack a little bit here. Look at how quick it is. I mean, there's just 3 steps for the landlord. You set up your account, you set up your properties, you send the invitation to the tenant. 15, 20 minutes. If you're a little bit slow, maybe half an hour. Now let's switch over to the tenant. Let's see how quick and easy it is for the tenant. They get the email, they click on get started, everything. So the tenant creates their account. They just enter their email, they create an account, they set up their password, just like any other web page. And then they get a whole series of explanation screens for the tenants. Because think about it. I mean, the tenants are not going to know what this guarantor's company is. They don't know what a rent coverage is. They don't know what the security deposit coverage is. So I just took the headings. There's a whole 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 screens that they go through that explains to the tenants what the company's about, how quick it is. Hey, we're just going to run a soft credit check, just to give them some information. After that, they click on go to application. And then the tenant goes through and answers a whole series of questions. Let me go back because somebody's got a question here. Jeffrey's saying, please explain again why there is no LTO violation if the amount of the bond is greater than the maximum. Okay, Jeffrey, good question. So the reason that the legislatures capped the Chicago and Cook County RTLOs is because it was getting way too expensive for the applicants, for the tenants, to come up with those large security deposits. A lot of landlords were asking for 2 months security deposit, thousands of dollars. So instead, this is why they capped it at 1.5 months. That's still thousands of dollars, that the tenants have to come up with. The reason that these security deposit companies, insurance companies, are different is because the cost is so low. The premium that these applicants are paying is way below. I'm going to show you samples of how much they cost. Way, way, way below that 1.5 months rent. So it absolutely fulfills the requirement, or the reason why the legislators, capped it at the 1.5 months rent. It's, these companies are making it very, very affordable. Yes, we're still getting the coverage that's more than a 1.5 months rent, but the premium, the cost is way below 1.5 months rent. So that's why they are allowed. Paul, following up with Jerry, thought process, but your lease is going to say a dollar amount that is more than 1.5 times rent. No. So Paul, your lease doesn't specify the coverage at all. Oh, shoot, I should have brought one up. I should have showed you the example lease clause in there. I'll bring up one of my leases to show you exactly what type of clause you should put in there, but you don't mention the coverage at all in your leases. All you say is, hey, there's a security deposit insurance instead of a security deposit. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. From a legal standpoint, they're completely different. It's, you're buying an insurance product, a surety bond. You're not asking for a security deposit. And then the second reason is because the cost is significantly below that 1.5 month. Okay. Okay, so let's keep going here with what the tenant does after they set up an account. Then they just go through and answer a bunch of questions. And some of these I found were already pre-populated. You click on the little plus sign in there. I found an apartment. Yes. the apartment address isn't, of course I blurred out some of the information because these are my properties, my personal information. But then you just say, the tenant just says, yes, I'm the leaseholder. Yes, I'm not working with a real estate broker. I guess the agents and brokers can sell this product, but we're individual landlords. So then the tenant just says no. So they fill out those or just click on yes or no for those. And then they continue to just answer the questions. I will be paying, and then you enter whatever the rent is. They verify, yes, this is the move-in date. They verify, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, whatever their lease is. Um, they already have the guarantors already has their information because you filled it out, but then they're just verifying, yes, yes, this is my name. And then a couple more questions. Will your name be on the leaseholder? Yes. What's your residency status, whether you are international, or U.S. citizen? They ask. So everything else so far is basically just like I said, they click on the plus sign and there's like a yes, no underneath there. They just click on it. This is one where the tenant will have to actually enter their information. What is their current street address, what their phone number is. And I guess the guarantors must have a really big international audience because they do have a line here saying, hey, what's another way we can get a hold of you if you are living abroad? Let me finish the questions here and then I'll get to the chat question. A couple more. They verify what's their date of birth. They specify what their employment status is. They enter their income, how much money they have there in bank account, and then they enter their social security number. I made this up just for the sake. Remember, I pretended to be me, like a tenant, answering these questions. So this is not actually what I make. I wish I made that much, but I just figured, hey, I don't know, maybe the average tenant for your average property, hopefully this is how much they make. So I just threw in their 75,000. I don't know, maybe you guys can verify or not. I would hope that people had at least 10,000 in the bank. Most people probably don't. Most tenants probably only have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. I don't know. I just threw that in there just to kind of see, give an example. I think that is it. And that's it. So then the last step is the tenant uploads the ID. You guys have seen lots of websites. You just click on, browse, select the file, click on submit, and that's it. And then the guarantors does a soft pull on their credit. Okay, so that's the step 3. That's all the tenants have to do. I mean, think about it. How long does that take? Again, 15 minutes, not very long. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, and that's it. So what, about 10, 15 minutes? I think that's stretching it, that the landlord needs to enter their info, another 10, 15 minutes that that the tenant needs to enter their information. Once both sides have entered the information, you get a decision. Are the guarantors going to approve or deny the tenant? The landlord and the tenant receive an email. According to the company, most landlords and tenants get a decision within 1 hour. I think that is fantastic. The both that I did, boom, they were instantaneous. It's just, how you guys, when we're screening our applicants during the screening process and we get that screening report, the credit report, the eviction report, that's instantaneous. It's the same thing the same way that this one works. There are some cases that might be a little bit, they might need some more time. They may not approve them right away, but the agent that I talked to from the guarantor says, what we'll do is we'll review these on a case-by-case basis. Somebody will manually review those and make a decision on those. Maybe there's somebody that just, I'll review here in a second what the factors are, but there may be cases that are more challenging for the tenants. They may have some issues that make it a little bit more difficult to instantly approve them. And then a big question is, hey, are all the applicants accepted? What the agent said is if you want the rent coverage, most applicants are accepted, but of course the high risk ones are not going to be. And then as far as if you want the security deposit coverage, everybody is going to be accepted except for the really high risk properties. Let's say you have a downtown condo that rents for $10,000 a month and you want, 3 months of security, or you want the security deposit is just going to be so expensive. It's just too much of a risk for the company, but they will accept all properties that have, an average amount of security deposit. Rent, it's really going to depend. And I'll show you here in a second what the decision points are as far as whether the applicants are going to be accepted or not. And here is just an example of the email that you'll receive the landlord gets it. Hey, so-and-so is pre-approved, blah, blah, blah. And there's instructions on there about everything. Okay, let me go chat. AJ says, can an existing tenant buy this insurance who is already running behind in rent by 2 months. No, that would be great, but I think we would all agree that the insurance company would quickly go bankrupt if they were paying out claims for people who were already behind. So no, you can't buy this for people who are already running behind. You can use it for your existing tenants, but you can only enroll them at renewal, and you can only submit a claim. I'll hold off on the details, but there's only certain circumstances under which you can submit a claim, and running behind on rent is not one of them. Okay. Okay, so that's the decision. After you get, hopefully, everybody will get approved, and then that's it. All you do is that the tenant gets this little email in which they click on the electronic signature, and then the tenant pays for it. They can pay with a credit card, although there's a 3% fee. They link their bank account. And like I said, these guarantors must have a lot of international clients, because there's even an option here for the international wire. Two things to note here is that the tenant does have to pay the entire amount up front. So here's what my quote was after pretending to be a tenant or an applicant there. And that is one difference between Rhino used to let the tenants pay over the 12 months. The guarantors does not. You got to pay everything up front. And the reason when I asked the agent why, I think we can all, guess why, is what do you do then, or what does the company do if the tenant stops paying for it? It's very difficult to collect the rest of the premium, so that you do have to pay upfront. One of the things I absolutely loved, at least for the security deposit, is the tenant only has to pay this fee once. And that's a big difference between Rhino. Rhino, at the end of the lease, they had to keep paying and paying and paying. So, after a while, they would pay that security deposit premium over and over and over again. Well, after 2 or 3 years, they would have been better off just getting the security deposit together, but not with the guarantors. At least for the security deposit part, they only pay this premium once, and it covers them for the entire length of their tenancy. Okay, I'll return to that again in a second here. Jackie says, does it cause people to stop paying? What is the downside for them? I guess that is a risk for anybody for any of our tenants. Whenever we sign a lease, yeah, there is a risk for the tenants to just stop paying us the rent. There is a risk for them here as well, but I guess the deterrents for an eviction also stand here in that, most tenants are responsible. Most of them don't want to end up with that eviction record on their case, because then they're going to have such a hard time later on. And in order to get the landlord to get reimbursed here by the guarantors, you do have to file an eviction. And then the company is going to go after the tenants for that past due rent. And they're going to be much more successful at collecting that past due rent than we are. So I'll return to that question here again in a little bit, Jackie, but I don't think this is like a carrot that we can hold, or the tenants will look and be like, oh, wow, I can just stop paying rent. I don't care. The company's going to pay for me anyway. I don't think so. And if that were the case, I think this company would have gone out of business a long time ago, because then everybody would stop paying. Okay, Jeffrey says for the 626 premium. Okay, hold on, Jeffrey, because I've got like 3 different examples where I'm going to show you all the different rent coverages that I selected and all the different security deposit coverages that I selected, because I think everybody is really curious, well, how much is this dang thing going to cost here? And then Kimberly saying, I just want to make sure I heard right. They don't pay again when you renew their lease for another year. Absolutely right, Kimberly. I had the same reaction when I did this, and when I talked to the agent, I was like, what? This is only a one-time fee for the security deposit? It is. So that is amazing. Much, much better than Rhino, like I said, which you have to pay, year if every single time the lease renews. The premium that they pay for the security deposit is a one-time fee. Awesome. Okay, let me keep going here. Let's see how we're doing. Okay, we're running a little bit long, but I think we're getting some really good information. You guys are seeing how it works, and we're getting some fantastic questions. Okay, so let's keep going. Once everything is set up, the tenant has paid for their policies. This is just, I guess, on an FYI, you do have a cool little dashboard where you click on this little icon and you can just see all of your, policies that you have in place. This one I already got done. This one, I had two tenants try it out, and I'll show you in the examples here. And then there was me, myself, pretending to be a fake tenant. I think this is why this one is green. The tenant has already paid, signed, sealed, delivered. It's in effect. And this one, we're still in the process here. But you can make it really easy to manage all of your policies here. Oh my gosh, you got three more questions. Let's see. Jeffrey, so the tenant's trade-off is pay a non-refundable bond rather than a refundable security deposit. Absolutely right, Jeffrey. That is, you hit it right on the head. There are pros and cons, and all the very last slide, I think, of the presentation talks about the pros and cons for the tenant. The trade-off is, yeah, they pay a fee, but it's a smaller fee, but it is non-refundable. Whereas the security deposit, they pay a big fee, could be a huge, security deposit, but it is refundable. Paul says, do you have to notify the guarantors of the renewal? No, they said that just as long as the tenants, continue to live there, you don't have to let them know. And then Kimberly says, can they pay this with a credit card? Yep, Kimberly, you can. Let me go back here. So you can see here, one of the ways they can pay is with a credit card. Now, there is a fee of 3%, but again, if you have a tenant who doesn't mind paying that fee, that's more money in their pocket that they don't have to pay for the security deposit. Maybe they're more than happy to pay that 3% fee, but you leave that up entirely to the tenants, but they can pay with with a credit card. Let me keep going here. I'll get another question. This is great because so many people lately just don't have cash. Exactly. So again, instead of having to come up with $2,000 security deposit, you pay that $600 plus a 3% fee, and then the tenants are good to go. Any way you can make it easily and affordable for these tenants to get into your property, they are going to love it. Okay. So the last step then is, the tenant has paid. And then the last step is the landlord and tenant receive the surety bond. Remember, this is why I explained what a surety bond is. So you get the documentation, you get the paperwork saying, okay, this is what we cover, this is how it works. Here, here it is. I'll just show it to you. I don't think we're gonna look at it, but it shows me, what the coverage is. And this one is 20 pages of, hey, this is what we cover, this is how it works. I'll be honest, I didn't read through it. And then there's another one that's like an agreement, specifies all the terms and conditions, another 14 pages. Again, I'll be honest, I didn't read it. And I think a lot of us are guilty about not reading through all of these really intense legal terms. I just did it not too long ago. I will at least skim through it, but I think we're all really familiar with, how contracts work, and it specifies everything in here. Okay. So that's what you receive. That's your proof. Instead of having a security deposit sitting there in a bank account, these surety bonds are your proof, your paperwork, your certificate that protects you.